It's here, it's finally here. Welcome to Pixel Peak,
AppTV's newest original program, bringing you everything you need to know about the video game industry.
On today's episode, we'll be joined by Nintendo analyst Zach Beasley to discuss Nintendo's paid online service, or I guess the lack of a paid online service.
Later, we'll take an in-depth look into the PlayStation Classics announcement. Is this trend of mini consoles preloaded with games and nostalgia actually hurting the consumer in the long run?
And to close out the show, reviewer Logan Berg will be looking at Shadow of the Tomb Raider in excavating detail.
I don't think you did that correctly, but we know that what you were going for. It's been a very busy week in news, so let's get this thing started. I'm Jean-Luc Clark.
I'm Bobby Eggins, and we hope you enjoy your stay here
on Pixel Peak. For our first news story ever, we're starting with a bang. Telltale Games, developer of visual novel franchises like The Walking Dead and The Wolf Among Us, announced on Friday that they would be laying off 90% of their staff, dropping from a 250-person team to 25. According to former Telltale employee Emily Grace Buck, the staff did not receive any sort of severance. Company insurance would only last for a week following the layoffs, and because many employees were signed to temporary contracts, they are ineligible for unemployment benefits. Brandon Sabanka, another ex-employee, also tweeted frustrations, saying, "None of my sleepless nights or long hours on weekends trying to ship a game on time got me severance today. Don't work overtime unless you're paid for it, y'all. Protect your health. Companies don't care about you." Initial reports of the closure said the remaining 25 would finish out The Walking Dead, which has 2 episodes left in its final season. However, Telltale later clarified these employees would be working to fulfill Telltale's deal with Netflix to adapt Minecraft story mode for the service. This raised questions about what will happen for those who bought a season pass for The Walking Dead, as well as concerns over a critically acclaimed IP being left unfinished, a la Half-Life. The layoffs also reignited discussions around toxic workplaces in the video game industry. Developers are often forced into crunch periods to ensure a game will ship on time. These crunch periods include 80-hour work weeks, no overtime pay, and are often responsible for devs burning out after short stints in the industry. The situation is still unfolding, and we will be sure to update you with more next week.
In similar news, Dead Rising developer Capcom Vancouver announced via Twitter on September 18th that the studio was closing down. We're sad to announce that effective today, Capcom Vancouver has suspended operations, the tweet reads. In a statement to GamesIndustry.biz, a representative of Capcom said that it was looking into the distribution of its resources and, to increase the company's efficiency and growth potential, it would be canceling ongoing projects in Vancouver and concentrating on titles being developed in Japan. 158 employees lost their jobs as a result of the closing, and the fates of series like Dead Rising and Puzzle Fighter are in limbo. Capcom estimated that it would lose around $40 million on the closing, but still anticipates that it will meet all of its financial goals for the year on the back of a strong release of Monster Hunter World this January.
Just a few weeks after surviving a shooting at a Madden tournament in Jacksonville, Florida, Ryan Allman, known by his handle Bad Rep, was involved in a fatal car accident on September 16th. According to Corpus Christi police, Allman lost control of his vehicle around 4 a.m. and was thrown from the car onto the road. Allman was not wearing a seatbelt at the time. He was pronounced dead at the scene, and local police are still investigating the situation.
After struggling to find success on its own, YouTube has decided to discontinue the dedicated app and website for YouTube Gaming. Instead, the viewing platform is being moved to a spot under the navigation bar on the main website. Ryan Wyatt, YouTube's director of gaming, content, and partnerships, said that despite the move, YouTube Gaming will continue to receive updates.
Last week, Sony announced that PlayStation Now would begin allowing subscribers to download most of the PS4 and PS2 games already on the service. PlayStation 3 games were strangely absent from this announcement, but it's a step in the right direction. PlayStation Now will begin to act more like something akin to Microsoft's Game Pass service, which allows users to download and play any game in the Game Pass library, both online and off. PlayStation Now previously only allowed users to stream games to their systems, which required a steady, reliable internet connection and couldn't register force-sensitive inputs on the DualShock 4 controller. According to Sony, players will still need to connect their systems to the internet every few days for verification, but outside of that, the games are free to be played offline.
Sony also announced that a PlayStation 1 Classic system would be coming later this year. Like the NES Classic and SNES Classic that Nintendo produced before it, the PlayStation Classic is a mini version of the PlayStation 1 that comes preloaded with 20 games, including Final Fantasy VII, Tekken 3, and Ridge Racer Type 4. Due out December 3rd, the system will come with 2 replica controllers and a $100 price point.
In more plug-and-play news, Sega announced that its Sega Genesis Mini system is being pushed back to 2019. The publisher decided that it needed more time to get out a dedicated system, but in the meantime, players will be able to get their fix of Genesis games on Switch. The developer also announced that Sega Genesis Classics will be coming to the system this winter. The collection has already seen release on Xbox One, PS4, and PC, and features more than 50 games, including Sonic the Hedgehog, Toe Jam and Earl, and Streets of Rage.
Speaking of the Switch, Nintendo hosted a direct broadcast on September 13th and showed plenty for folks to get excited about over the coming year. The direct was originally slated for September 6th, but was delayed after a strong earthquake hit Japan's Hokkaido region. Of the upcoming games shown in the direct, some standouts include Luigi's Mansion 3, Yoshi's Crafted World, Katamari Damacy Rerolled, and New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, all on Nintendo Switch. The developer also announced that Animal Crossing New Leaf's adorable assistant Isabelle would be joining the upcoming Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. Nintendo capped it off by teasing a new Animal Crossing game for the Switch, which will be launching in 2019.
Finally, PlayStation 4 owners may also be able to get their hands on the popular Battle Royale game PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds soon, according to a leak from the Korean Game Rating Board. The KRGB also leaked Fortnite for Nintendo Switch before its official announcement at E3 earlier this year. PUBG is reaching its one-year anniversary on Xbox One soon, and it's possible that Microsoft's console exclusivity period with the game is coming to an end. This not only makes this leak possible, but it even suggests that the title may be coming to Nintendo Switch.
And that closes out a busy week in news. Anytime a major developer shuts its doors, there's a lot to talk about, never mind when two close down. On a more lighthearted note, Nintendo made waves with new game announcements in their direct, but hard details about a certain elephant in the room left fans with a bad taste in their mouth. For more on that, we move to our analysis segment.
Nintendo has long been known for its multiplayer games, but that doesn't mean they're known for online gaming. Starting with the GameCube era, Nintendo has lagged behind Xbox and PlayStation when it comes to online multiplayer. Now here we are, 3 console generations later, and online services for the Switch pale in comparison to its competitors. So the obvious question is, what is Nintendo doing? Joining us now to answer that question is resident Nintendo analyst, Zach Beasley. Zach, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to be here.
I really appreciate you joining us. So give Bobby and I a little rundown as to what we're really talking about with this new online service that Nintendo's got.
Okay, so the Nintendo online service has 5 major points. Obviously, the biggest component is the online play, being able to play with your friends online. But the other things is where it gets a little, snags and where people are kind of voicing complaints about it. So the second is cloud data. A lot of people are really upset about it because if your subscription lapses, like you don't renew it, you don't have auto renewal on, Nintendo actually deletes your cloud saves. And so there's been some uproar from the community about that. The next thing is going to be, there's a smartphone app which offers marginally beneficial additions to some of the games you already have, like Splatoon 2, Mario Tennis Aces, ARMS, and things like that. Fourth is you're going to have some special offers, and they're kind of lacking there as well. Right now, the only 2 that they have is some exclusive Splatoon 2 content, like a shirt, a hat, gear that gives you some abilities in the game. And the other big thing is they have some NES controllers which dock and attach to your Nintendo Switch, and that leads me to the final part of the Nintendo Online service is they have a launch of 20 NES titles for the online service. If you have it, you get to have access to them. They have a couple of the big names like Super Mario Bros. 3, Dr. Mario, Ice Climbers, but then you have a little bit more lackluster titles like hockey, wrestling, and don't get me wrong, I love some Tecmo Bowl, but I'm not going out and rushing to the stores to get online service for that.
So you mentioned there were some complaints about Nintendo's online service. Is the buzz all complaints, or are there some good parts of it?
It's mixed reviews. The thing that Nintendo's online service has done incredibly well is the price point. So there are 4 major plans. The lowest is for 1 month. You'll get it for $3.99. For 3 months, you can get it for $7.99. For a 12-month, a year subscription, it is $19.99. And if you want to do a family plan, which includes up to 8 people, including yourself, it is $34.99.
Sounds good. So in terms of everything that we've been talking about so far, one thing that we've been really thinking about is the idea of advertising this service. So what exactly has Nintendo been doing, I guess, wrong in terms of the actual execution of the advertising?
If you're not a super big Nintendo person, I think you're just not gonna know too much about it. I'm not a big cable subscription, like I don't watch cable TV, but I haven't seen any advertisements on television. So if you're not watching the Nintendo Directs, if you don't have a Switch, they advertise via the little news channel on your sidebar of your Nintendo Switch. And if you don't have an official Nintendo account, you're not receiving their emails. They send out a weekly newsletter which suggests some games you might want to play and some of the updates in terms of what's going on with Nintendo.
So, and I hate to say this, but it seems like thinking about Christmas comes earlier and earlier each year, or whatever holiday you happen to be shopping for. So do you think this is going to change anything in the holiday season? Do you think this is going to be a big ticket for people to find like the $20 year subscription in their stocking when they wake up?
I personally would be excited about it, just because $19.99, 20 bucks, it's super cheap. And I do think going into the holiday season, you'll see a lot more subscribers to the online service. Super Mario Party coming out in October, and you've also got Smash Ultimate coming in December 7th. And
yeah, it's going to be a big one.
of course, I mean, it's Super Smash Brothers is a huge game series. A lot of people are very passionate about it. So I think you're going to see a lot of people getting excited about that and subscribing them.
Sounds perfect. So then I think the big question is in terms of, as we alluded to earlier with PlayStation Plus and Xbox Marketplace and that service, how big of a competition do you think it's going to be in the ring?
Unfortunately for Nintendo, it's not much of a competition. Aside from the money aspect, you're just not getting as much value out of the money you're spending. Granted, Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus is about $60 for an entire year, but you're getting, now that they're later into the cycle of the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, you're getting AAA and AA releases for your free games of the month. Nintendo, while there's a lot of novelty to the NES, that's not something that I think a lot of people are going to get really excited about, because you've got NES titles on the Virtual Console and things like that.
Okay. And do you think Nintendo fans at this point really even care about the online play, or just more of that sort of robust kiosk of games?
The people that are playing Splatoon 2, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they're excited about it, but outside of that, I don't see a lot of buzz.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah, I was happy to be here.
So thanks again to Zach for offering some insight into Nintendo's awkward relationship with online gaming. Now I'd like to toss over to Bobby for this week's editorial.
Last week, Sony announced that they were joining Nintendo and Sega in reviving the plug-and-play market as they showed off the upcoming PlayStation Classic. The system is set to release this December for $100 and includes 20 games, including Wild Arms, Final Fantasy VII, and Ridge Racer Type 4. At the same time, Sega announced that the release date of their upcoming Sega Genesis Mini was being pushed back into 2019. Not that this is much of a problem, as Sega has been putting out similar consoles to the Genesis Mini for years now, but it's something to think about. The two publishers are joining Nintendo on the all-in-one bandwagon that started with the release of the NES Classic in 2016 and the SNES Classic the following year. The basic premise is that these companies take all of the games people are nostalgic for, put them in a tiny version of their favorite systems, and sell them for $70 to $100. This is a great way to pull in casual gamers or people who aged out of gaming, as it provides a strong sense of familiarity and nostalgia, as well as a neat collectible and a decent selection of games. That being said, it would be really nice if these publishers would also make these games available to play on current-gen home consoles. Now, this doesn't really apply to Sega, as they've shown willingness to put their games on anything that can play them, but these announcements are sort of bittersweet to Switch and PS4 owners. When the Switch released, many saw it as having the potential to be the ultimate Nintendo system. With its unique hybrid home and portable dynamic, folks recognized that it could be the one-stop Nintendo shop, where people can enjoy 30-plus years of gaming either at home or on the go. But instead of continuing their decade-old virtual console method of handling older games, Nintendo kept all legacy content off of the Switch for the first 18 months of its life. Instead, they suggested that the NES Classic and SNES Classic were the extent of their plans for the time being. Nintendo did ultimately end up releasing a handful of NES games on Switch, but they're tied to a subscription service, and the selection is currently 2/3 the size of the NES Classic's library. While new games are being added monthly, the system is a far cry from past virtual console libraries. Sony is in a similar boat. The PlayStation 4 has all the exclusives it could ask for right now, but outside of a small selection of PS2 and PS3 games on PlayStation Now, the system doesn't support any form of backwards compatibility or legacy content. If they want to play Metal Gear Solid on a current-gen system, players will need to purchase the game on a PlayStation 3, connect to their PlayStation Vita, and transfer the game from there. The entire library of PlayStation 1 classics used to be available for download directly to Vitas from the store, but many notable titles lost direct download status in the US in 2014. It just seems like such a step backwards for these companies. The console generation prior to this one tackled backwards compatibility and legacy content so much better than the current one, and it's genuinely confusing to me. Early PS3 models could play PS2 games, the Wii U could play Wii games, and the Xbox 360 could tackle most original Xbox games. Conditions have only worsened over time. Sony took out backwards compatibility from the PS3s later in the generation, and eliminated most ways to access PlayStation 1 classics on the PS4. The Switch has a pretty obvious excuse for eliminating backwards compatibility, seeing as it doesn't have a disk drive, but the removal of Virtual Console seems to defy all common sense. This wave of plug-and-play is a really neat draw for collectors and casual gamers that don't own current-gen systems, but it shouldn't be the only way to legally access these games. Publishers are adamant on preventing people from playing ROMs of their old games, so the only alternative they're giving players is buying the games on their original systems. The strange part is, whether it's a ROM or used retro games, the creators aren't seeing a dime, so why bother? Ironically, for as many things Xbox has fumbled this generation, this is the one thing they seem to be on top of. Their list of backwards compatible games is continuously expanding, and they've recently started adding original Xbox games to the mix. And honestly, backwards compatibility isn't even a necessity here. Sony has long since ruled that out for the PS4, and it just isn't possible for the Switch. However, players have shown over and over that they are more than happy to pay for these games again anytime and anywhere they can. So please, Sony, Nintendo, shut up and take our money.
Hey, I'm Logan Berg, and this is Pixel Peak's review of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Let's find out if there's treasure in this reopened tomb.
What are you doing? I'm gonna level it!
Shadow of the Tomb Raider is the final installment of the origin trilogy of the rebooted Tomb Raider franchise, developed by Eidos Montreal and released worldwide on September 14th on Windows, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. You reprise the role of Lara Croft, now a hardened adventurer as you travel Mesoamerica and South America after inadvertently triggering the Mayan apocalypse. It's up to you to discover a way to end the destruction and the shady organization trying to exploit it. Not only do you explore a wide world, but also the mind of Lara Croft as you delve inside her motivations for her danger-prone journeys. This introspection was definitely where the writing popped for me, as the antagonist group, Trinity from the past games, felt simply average. With a game so ingrained with themes of exploration, Shadow of the Tomb Raider fortunately translates that into its core gameplay. Each area is packed with things to find, whether it's a wild pig to skin, a document to read, or a Mayan text to decipher for riddles. Even better, there's more puzzle-filled challenge tombs than past games, which reward you with perks or blueprints for craftable outfits. If you're a completionist like me, you'll find yourself spending a lot of time hunting for all sorts of items, although sometimes to the level of tedium. Having to double back through an entire tomb, all for a single vein of gold you can mine now, is a bit ridiculous. But at least they made the traveling fun. Through the opening hours of my playthrough, the main feature I found myself constantly impressed with was the movement. Of course, you can jump and climb, but you also find yourself scaling rocks with your trusted climbing axe. And from any such position, you can rappel down, swing, and launch yourself across chasms. If that's not stylish enough for you, you can leap, hook your axe onto a branch, go flying, and then stick the landing onto another wall. With your bow, you can create your own zip lines that eventually burn through areas with fire arrows. Trekking through ruins could have gotten a bit tiresome after you climb the 18th wall, but the number of methods available for you to maneuver keeps things fresh. Naturally, there's the occasional glitch. You'll randomly lose grip on a wall or just get briefly stuck for whatever reason, but overall the game lets you feel in control. Now, all that ability would be wasted if the world itself was bland, but the game is packed with breathtaking visuals. Multiple times I found myself stopping to take in the environment. From rolling landscapes to surprisingly enjoyable underwater sequences to lively Mexican villages, I thoroughly enjoyed just sightseeing. This is only strengthened by a robust photo mode, truly proving that even Lara Croft can enjoy some selfie tourism from time to time. With great graphics, however, comes great responsibility to optimize. While the game's benchmark recommended my PC for high settings, I still encountered numerous awkward stutters, both in cutscenes and gameplay. It's jarring to go from a fluid run to choppy frames. And you can see that evident throughout this review. The clips you're seeing were just how I experienced them. The game looks great, but just not when you're seeing it through stuttered slow motion. Still, the great world design was by no means ruined by this, and I still eagerly push past these issues. Inhabiting the game's landscapes are a variety of animals large and small, from adorable little frogs to less adorable, more aggressive jaguars. And that's not to mention the roaming paramilitary squads. Luckily for Laura, she's equipped with a cache of weapons, which can be upgraded from scavenged materials from the wild. The combat itself is rather simple, with not a lot of innovation in this aspect. For the most part, I felt like the number of enemies was actually rather low, so much so that weapon upgrades were of little importance to me. There was a notable firefight sequence early on, complete with explosive barrels, that set an expectation for more fights, but it just kind of faded away to Laura exploring alone. It harkens back to the focus on exploration, not annihilation, that's been a hallmark of the franchise's past. Things get a little more interesting later in the game with the introduction of a less human enemy, but I never really felt excited for combat. The stealth mechanics were far more engaging. Covering yourself in mud, blending in with foliage, and taking down Trinity goons felt satisfying and more realistic than Laura just having a shootout with an army of enemies. Personally, I prioritized the stealth skills because it just seems like the intended way to play the game. Ultimately, Shadow of the Tomb Raider is a solid game. While marred by an average story, occasional performance hiccups, and combat that lacks in innovation, it redeems itself not simply by creating a rich world full of great sights, but by empowering you to explore it. If you're a fan of action and adventure, you can't go wrong picking up this treasure. And that was Shadow of the Tomb Raider, a solid adventure to end the reboot trilogy. Here's hoping Eidos Montreal takes us to another tomb sometime in the future. Now we go to Bobby and John Luke to wrap up the show.
Well, it's been real, y'all. We've made it to the end of our very first episode.
And our producer only had 2 mental breakdowns. I'd say that's a pretty good first run. Jean-Luc, what news story do you think is most interesting this week?
I think the PlayStation Classic announcement for me. I was born in '97, so I really didn't get a chance to experience the PlayStation 1 era. So now that I have a device that I can actually do that on, it's going to be really exciting for me. That Final Fantasy VII, legit. I know, I'm really late to the party, but it's all good. What about you, man?
I'm really excited for the Nintendo Switch Online. I know it's off to a bit of a rocky start, but the Nintendo 64 was really my first console, so I never got a chance to play NES or SNES games, and I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Sounds like a plan. If there's any stories you want to make sure we keep an eye on, let us know in the comments below. You can also hit us up on Twitter at @PixelPeak AppTV to let us know your thoughts on the show.
Even though Jean-Luc and I are clearly the stars of the show, we do want to recognize the rest of our crew, both in front of and behind the camera.
Thanks to writers Max Stein and Tanner Mazzell, analyst Zach Beasley, reviewer Logan Berg, associate producer Kyle Presley, and producer Will Strickland.
All Pixel Peak episodes are available on watchapptv.com and AppTV's Facebook and YouTube pages. New episodes premiere live on AppTV every Wednesday at 4 p.m.
Thanks for visiting, and we hope you enjoyed your stay on Pixel Peak.